Hi everyone, I'm Kristen. Welcome and welcome back. Today I'm going to be reviewing the book Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's newest release and a book that I was definitely anticipating coming out this year. I generally believe that with each of the Emily Henry books, and whether or not it's going to be a good fit, whether or not it's going to work for you, is going to be dependent on how you relate to the story that the character is going through, and not necessarily not the romantic setup, but more the other emotional third of the way life crisis that particular character is experiencing in the book. And that's why I think a lot of people have such drastically different opinions on which Emily Henry book they enjoy the most. So with that being said, obviously my take on Funny Story is going to be different from everyone else's, or different from your how you might perceive the book because of what the character is going through or dealing with in this particular book. In this book, we're following Daphne, who is a librarian who moved with her fiance to this small town in the middle of, or somewhere in Michigan, only to be left by his definitely only friends, nothing more, practically sister, female best friend. Now, of course, her ex-fiance also was the sole owner of the house where they were living, and so Daphne finds herself moving in with her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex-boyfriend. So when Daphne and her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex-boyfriend, Miles, both receive an invitation to Petra and Peter's wedding, which of course is taking place only a month after Daphne and Peter's intended original wedding. They both get drunk and RSVP going. Daphne decides, or kind of a spur of the moment, to declare that her and Miles are going to be attending the wedding together. And so there we get this fake dating roommates scenario with this whole funny story of the ex-fiance, new fiance, that whole bit, And obviously this is a story of Daphne and Miles coming together. And then always with an Emily Henry book, I feel like there's a pretty significant mental, emotional component that the main character is working through in or over the course of the book. And I would say with Daphne's case, we're definitely dealing with the idea of being worthy of love and worth people showing up for you, and that stems from an absentee parent relationship. So that is sort of the emotional crises, the emotional work sort of that is being done in this particular book. Overall, I really liked the setup here. I enjoyed the concept. I really, really enjoy the dialogue always between our main character and the hero, in this case, Miles. I think Emily Henry writes really, really almost unbelievably good dialogue between her main characters. There are moments that feel very real and genuine, but I feel like her main characters are almost too quick. Always consistently, and it makes for great banter, it makes for a great reading experience, but there's that small little bit that feels damn, are her characters really this cool? Where they're almost too witty and too quick. But that's just a small little aside. I do also always enjoy and almost prefer in these particular cases with Emily Henry's books that we're only ever getting our heroine's point of view. I feel and especially in this particular case, I feel it, not knowing what is going on in the head of our hero, makes you really, really buy into the viewpoint that our main character has, so that you're not yelling at her the whole time being oh, can't you see such and such? And to some extent, there's a little bit of that. Always, of course, with a fake dating, you're going to have some elements of miscommunication, as that's the whole tension of generally a fake dating setup. But not having the hero's perspective, it does sort of keep you questioning not whether or not the person is falling for them, but when and where and why did they react that way, what's going on in their head. So I like that it has that element of mystery, I guess, by only having the one POV. Additionally, there were some discussions or communication between the two main characters later on where the hero actually reflected to the main character a trend that he was noticing in their communication pattern, and it was one that I totally missed. Because we are so much in our main character's voice, in her head, that I didn't realize And when he brought that up and called it out, I was actually a little bit surprised that I hadn't noticed that more from a perspective of like the way that he was interpreting it and viewing it. So because you're only getting like the insight of the main character, you kind of miss, in a good way, that he is seeing her refer or think about their dynamic a particular way. And I thought that was very well done. It was a great element of their communication. I also think that the main characters had really great chemistry right from the beginning. Maybe not the beginning, like I think when they first are just living together as roommates, I think there's like a little bit of like, ugh. But once the two begin to start interacting a lot more, I actually thought they had really great chemistry, in a really good friendship, here for each other in this mutual suffering kind of shared experience. Another thing that I thought was really well done and that I find generally works well for me with Emily Henry books is that by the time we get to the beginnings of intimacy scenes, whether that's a first kiss or like maybe the first time there's something a little bit more or like an almost situation, I generally find that the lead up and build up to that in terms of the chemistry, the rapport, the back and forth, the tension that is built, I think she does a really, really great job of building tension so that those intimacy scenes do hit really well. For me, where you're like, oh my God, yes, it's finally happening, and you're like egging them on, sort of. So yeah, I think that Emily Henry does for my particular taste, I think she does a really good job of building tension leading up into the various intimacy scenes that do occur. Now for some critiques or things that didn't necessarily work for me, or that I thought, or that I wished could have been done a slightly different way. I will say that this one felt significantly less emotionally heavy hitting than her other books for me. Now, dealing with an absentee parent as a child and feeling not worthy of love are not necessarily emotional situations that I can connect with or that I have found in my life. So I do think that plays into just this particular book really hitting for me. But I will say that given the fact that she was like left by her fiance as the setup to this book, I still think it took a shockingly long time to get into the heavy emotional stuff. Like, we're not dealing with a distraught, really distressed someone who has just been broken up with or left by their fiance. I even remember feeling at like the 50 or 60% mark that I was surprised that it hadn't really dug into even the parenthood stuff. Like, she would make small little references here and there. There's some parent stuff that is alluded to with our hero's backstory as well, but it wasn't built in a way, or it wasn't, I don't know, it just felt like it was there but not really, grinding it in the way that I feel like Emily Henry usually writes the emotional, heavy-hitting emotional side of the story. I generally think in each of her past books, whether or not they like really, really connected for me emotionally, I usually find that there's at least a scene that feels, where like it's built up for so long, this like emotional, what's the right word? The emotional turmoil and personal work has built up over the course of the book, that then when that scene hits, I generally find that I am usually a little bit at least teary or like tight in the back of the throat. And I never really felt that at any point in this book, even though it did like really, really ramp up dealing with that stuff towards the end. It was just so subtle, maybe, in the first 60% of the book, that it hadn't like worn me down to make me have that emotional response that I typically do. And yeah, it surprisingly wasn't focusing on like I guess she wasn't jilted at the altar, but it was surprisingly less about dealing with the breakup, even at the very beginning, than I thought it would be. There is a missing best friend element too that became significant. Like, there is an overall trend in the worthy of love, the absentee people and people not showing up for her. Like, that is definitely a trigger. I thought she actually did a really good job of playing that into some character, like some personality traits and characteristics of our character. I was just really surprised that the missing best friend was off page for as significant of a length of time as they were. And that was like a situation where her and her ex-fiance had a couple friend. It was like her best friend and one of his best friends who wound up together. And so when our main character Daphne is left by her ex, the best friend and her partner aren't choosing sides, but really in the act of not choosing sides, pick a side. And so I was just really surprised that this missing best friend wasn't thought about even in our main character's mind more frequently. Like, she was surprisingly off page, it played a role into it, and it was part of an overall pattern. But yeah, I just thought that for the significance of that situation, I felt like it should have perhaps been on page a little bit more than it was, and we tended to focus on building a new community in this small town a lot more. I do think Daphne is a little bit boring of a main character. I feel bad saying that, and I'm not, it's not because she was, like a buttoned up librarian type figure. It's to some extent had to do with she's the type of person who really falls into relationships, like kind of becomes the person that she needs to be in that new relationship in terms of like hobbies and activities and even the books that she was reading. But because of that, it kind of made her feel like a little bit like beige. I say while sitting in a totally beige room. I feel like her personality was kind of bland on the page. And to some extent, she is exploring new activities and things. But even then, it still feels like she's choosing those things based on the people that she is currently hanging out with. And maybe some of them stick and maybe some of them don't down the road. I'm not sure. But it did feel similar to what she had done before, just with this new group of people. So I don't know how much growth that was, but I think it was an attempt at something that maybe didn't totally work. But because of that overall, it didn't really feel like she had like a strong personality in and of herself outside of this like really quick, witty banter with the hero, who I didn't really rave enough about in like my positive sections. I really, really enjoyed Miles as like a hero in this story. He was awesome. Yay, Miles. Love it. Worked for me. Another like final critique here, as I would say, which is something that I find across the board with romance books, it's really been bugging me lately, is the timeline. We're dealing with like really intense, strong emotions here in just too short of a time period. Why do romance authors feel the need to put this like 1 month, 2 month, 2 weeks, 3 months, like just these ridiculous time frames on their stories? I don't care if I don't need to read every date that they go on, We're getting like professing some strong feelings by the end of a book that spans.
A few moments later.
Okay, I have officially lost the light here, so I will wrap this up with my final overall thoughts. I did overall really enjoy this book. I thought it was like a great, fun romance to read, just not as much emotional kick to it that I usually expect to find from an Emily Henry book. I feel like that, in combination with the total lack of Meg Ryan references here, I almost wouldn't have known that this was an Emily Henry book if you hadn't told me it was. Maybe the dialogue could have given it away, but yeah, I feel like the slightly lighter or like missing heaviness in connection with the reduced pop culture references to what I'm used to from an Emily Henry book, I think that I almost wouldn't have known that this was an Emily Henry book. That being said, I do still really enjoy her writing. I liked the characters. I liked the sexual tension. I liked the banter. I had a good time with it overall. I did still rank this in the mid-4 range. And again, maybe the missing emotional part is just like a personal connection with that on my part, but still a really good showing, I think, from Emily Henry. Let me know if you have read Funny Story yet. Definitely not my favorite, but also not my least favorite Emily Henry book by far. my favorite is still Beach Read. It was my first Emily Henry, and it really set the tone that I have come to expect from Emily Henry in each and every book. And for that matter, I love that in every book she still continues to Easter egg reference our main characters from that book as well. So yeah, let me know if you agree with what I have said about Funny Story overall. Did you read it? Did you like it? And what is your favorite Emily Henry book to date? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.